Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the fifth episode of Discover Hospitality, a series where we discover hidden jobs and careers in the hospitality industry and share career advice for students, graduates, and those with a few years of experience and anyone else in the hospitality industry. I am your host, Maria Malania. I'm a hospitality graduate, a guest experience and hospitality brand specialist, founder of Savvy Hotelier, place for hospitality students to ask questions and find resources for their studies and beyond. I want to show what is really possible for each and every one of us in this wonderful industry. So, Discover Hospitality series dives into many areas such as events, travel, wine, today's event, entrepreneurship, hotels, and much more. So, make sure you follow WHTT and Savvy Hotelier to not miss upcoming themed events every Thursday, live here on LinkedIn with WHTT. So today's event is all about wine. And with me today, I have four amazing panelists to help us discover what is possible when it comes to career wine. A very niche area, actually, within the hospitality industry, as we will be talking about F&B next week. However, I wanted to separate wine as it is so specialist. Is it just about being a sommelier? Of course not. And we will give you all the more real life practical examples of how you can pursue your passion and interest of wine or other drinks professionally or maybe semi professionally. Whether you're a student, recent graduate, or not, you're going to be inspired by this panelist. Anytime during this discussion, pop your questions to the chat, and we will pick it up throughout the discussion, not just at the end, and we will make sure you get your answers. So, without further ado, let's meet the panel. Starting off, we got Elisa Paukkunen, a friend of mine from university. While we studied together, we took very different paths in our hospitality careers. Elisa dove deep into the world of wine, got WCT qualified really early on, and then pursued that path in wine business, earning a master's degree in international wine and spirits business from the Burgundy School of Business in France. So great to have you here, Elisa.
Thank you for the warm welcome. Really great to meet you guys and be here today.
That's great. Amazing. And then we have Andrew Unsworth. Andrew does not work in hospitality full time. In fact, his regular job is very different. Yet he's so passionate about wine that he spends most of, if not all, of his free time drinking and talking about it on his YouTube channel, The Grape Explorer. So great to have you, Andrew.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks for inviting me. Drinking in my spare time, absolutely.
And then we have Vidya Narasimhan. She's not a professional sommelier in that traditional sense. She is extremely passionate and knowledgeable about wine. With a consulting background, she's bravely entering the hospitality wine world as a freelance advisor now. So fantastic to have and share your story, Vidya.
Thank you very much, Maria, and very glad to be here and looking forward to this panel. Really excited.
Amazing, thank you. And our final panelist is Melody Wong. Melody is from Hong Kong and has had a very successful career as a sommelier in many of London's best luxury hotels. And as a hospitality graduate herself, she started her career on that traditional path, working her way up and making it her own. Thank you for coming on, Melody.
Thank you very much. Really look forward to share my journey with all of you.
Amazing. So just before we start, I want to thank you all so much for agreeing to join this panel, for volunteering your time to share your stories and give advice to students and really anyone who would be curious about careers in wine and where they can begin to pursue that. So it's great to have you all here. To start off, I want to start every panel by asking you to share your stories, because the personal stories that you have are individual, they're different, and they're the things that make us who we are. So if you don't mind, Elisa, would you take us on how did you end up, why did you choose wine? How did you get passionate and, furthering your education in wine?
Well, for me, it started, it's a story about language. I think I was about 8 when for the first time I heard French. This basically for me was, it took me to another space. And so it actually became my dream one day to pursue studies in French language and further on have an education in a very specific industry that I didn't really see that coming. When in 2012, well, actually it was before that, I got into travel industry. I thought that maybe one day this could be my thing. It then showed me that when we started with Maria, so in the uni, 2012, WSET, well, basically wine courses, it took me right there. Like the whole, in a nutshell, it's about history. It's about all the details that the wine industry shapes us and our world. And that's how I basically dove into it. And so, yeah, that's how it started. And later on with internships, I also met a sommelier in early stages of the studies. So I was mostly doing restaurant internship. But me and Maria, we both specialized in tourism sector, which means that, I remember that later on I found that tourism management basically doubled up with wine could actually be something that wine tourism could be my thing. And so I pursued another internship in France, and I did a harvest. First, it was a long 6-month journey in 2 different vineyards on 2 different domains, and they were actually both family-owned vineyards, which then turned out to be I found that was the thing that I really wanted to do. And then further on, I wanted to pursue in this industry, but more about the business, everything what is generated behind the soil, the terroir, the people, what is in the business sector. And yeah, that's how it started.
That's amazing. That's an interesting very different way, I would say, than one's typical expected. Amazing. Thank you. And Andrew, so how did you discover wine? Your day job obviously has nothing to do with it. So how did you discover it, and what made you take it so seriously?
Well, I've enjoyed wine for a very long time, but also for the longest time, I would probably be that sort of person who found a red bottle that they liked and didn't really deviate much away from that in terms of picking different styles, different varieties. I sort of liked what I liked. And then on a holiday about 6-7 years ago, I happened to be staying near a winery, and the winery, whilst it wasn't open for tours, allowed you to go and enjoy a glass of wine. And it was the first time I'd had a flight of wines. I had 12 wines as part of this flight of wines, all different styles, all different levels of sweetness. And in doing that, I just started to have an appreciation for wine that I hadn't necessarily had before. So over the next couple of years, just started to think about the wines that I liked. I was traveling to some places where I could try some local wines and just became that little bit more interested until around 5 years ago when I joined a local wine club where I live here. And it was through that it really started to become more of a passion. The people at the wine club had a really fantastic way of being able to describe wine, something that I wasn't able to do. They were giving me a little bit about the history, the geography, some of the science behind the wines that we were tasting. We'd go through around 8 wines each month. So I was starting to get that little bit more experience around wine. And through that, really started to appreciate and improve my own tasting abilities. And it just put me on a sort of path of education, really. I just wanted to learn a lot more about what was in my glass. You know, what was I drinking? Where did it come from? What kind of styles were there? What processes were going behind those styles? And so I started to study with the WSET, that's the Wine and Spirit Education Trust. And I started at the very beginning, level 1, which was a day course, just wanting to learn more. And so that study, coupled with my wine tasting at my monthly club, got me leading off into several directions. I started to visit vineyards, which I hadn't really done before. I started to buy things I wouldn't have ordinarily done before. And so that passion's sort of grown over the last few years to such an extent that I've continued with the studies. I did WSET at levels 2 and 3, and today find myself still seeking out new varieties of wine, new varieties of grapes I haven't tried before, and just trying to enjoy as much wine and learn about as much wine as I can. So that's where that takes me up to today.
Awesome. There's always something to learn, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Amazing. And Vidya, your story is a bit similar to Andrew's in that you're not a professional in the hospitality industry. You discovered wine as a hobby and then got super interested in it and got qualified in it. So can you tell us your story? How did you discover it and what made you pursue it more seriously now?
That's a fantastic question, because I grew up in India, where when I was growing up, there wasn't much wine to begin with. It was not easily accessible, not affordable. It was considered posh. So I didn't grow up having wine in my culture. However, my family is quite a foodie family. So, there's a huge appreciation for food and, recipes and to enjoy different types of food. And I was also, through my education, when I did uni, I actually studied pharmacy. So there was some biochemistry involved. But really through that, and having switched a few careers and studying and working in different places in India, I also had the ability to travel within India and globally. And I was always curious about food and wanted to eat and drink local. So eating and drinking local meant that once I had the ability to travel internationally outside India, especially to Europe, wine came with that. So, and I realized that food and wine together makes such a good platform to connect with friends, with family, to be connected with nature. One has a huge respect for the environment if you're out in the vineyards. So for me, it brought together fun, family, friends, connections, a healthy respect for the environment, and so on. So that's how it started. So I was actually on a summer exchange program to Germany about 15, 16 years ago, when the afternoons had optional German, and I thought, I'm not going to pick up German in 3 weeks. That was the length of the course. So a few friends and I had skipped optional German and took the train along the Moselle and the Rhine to be able to hop on and hop off across vineyards and do the wine tasting. So that's what really got me started on wine, besides obviously drinking it with food. So after that, since that time, 15 years ago, I have actually, anytime I've traveled, I've always tried to include a winery or a vineyard visit in whichever region of the country, wherever I am or wherever I'm visiting. So that's how I got hooked onto wine. And
amazing.
Yeah, to ask your question about where am I today, I think you asked that too. I think when I started drinking more wine and I started appreciating the different styles, I also wanted to, very similar to Andrew, educate myself about how is it that I like certain grapes, a grape from a certain region more than a grape from a different region. So it was more education for myself and also to remember. And so that's how I started with WSET level 2, because I thought I've been drinking wine for a while now. I think I can do level 2 directly, but that was 3 years ago. And I had been drinking wine for a while. So from then, I enjoyed it so much, and I enjoyed the process of learning about wine, that I went on to do WSET level 3 and wanted to continue with doing that as a more serious hobby. And for the last 2 years, I have actually stepped back from the management consulting banking world to be able to pursue food and wine appreciation full-time while also working as an advisor. So that's where I am, and continuing my wine education, of course.
That's great. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And finally, Melanie, you're from Hong Kong. You studied hospitality in Switzerland and UK. Can you share your journey in hospitality? When did you realize that was something you wanted to take professionally, and when did you find wine specifically?
Thank you, Maria. So my journey is a little bit more traditional compared with anyone else in the room today. I began my journey from Hong Kong, and I born and grew up there. And I moved to Switzerland to study in hotel and tourism management. Since young, I'm always really enjoy food and wine. And I find me quite mystery when people mentioning like what kind of fruity aromas, what kind of flavor they can find from the wine. When I was young, I just feel like, okay, that tastes like wine. That smell like white wine. That tastes like red wine. So during my education, I started to learn a bit more about wine as a beverage. And also there was the same time I start to consider about my career path. What kind of department that I'll potentially want to work in the future. As a hospitality student, we're thinking, oh, maybe front office, maybe event, maybe food and beverage, and so on. But one thing that I told myself is I want to work in a job that I'm going to feel exciting to go to work every day. So I look into what I was going to enjoy to do so, and I decide I'm going to become a professional sommelier in the age of 19. It's a very early stage for many people who think about a career decision. But since I make the decision, and I try to work my way through and go for it. And now it's my 9th year in London as a professional sommelier, and I'm currently opening a 5-star hotel in West London and looking after all the wine selection in different departments of the hotel.
That's a great, yeah, it's a great story, and I think it's the reason why I have all of you here and such different stories to tell is because there are so many different ways about it. Whether it's more traditional, become a sommelier, work your way up, whether it's doing it as a very serious hobby or just discovering it for just because you want to learn more about what you're drinking, or the business behind it. There's so many different ways, which is why we're here today to tell you, the audience, to what is possible, what are the different possibilities you can do, and what jobs you can have, or serious hobbies, so to say. So make sure to pop your questions in the comments. I will pick them up as you post them as well. So. As a hospitality graduate, Melody and Elisa, how has your education shaped your interest? Well, you mentioned it already a little bit, Elisa, in terms of it brought you to together with your passion for French language. Was there anything else about the studies that put your interest into wine specifically? Elisa, if you go first.
Sure. I would say that it was like 50-50, more to my interest, personal interest. Our studies at the uni didn't exactly encourage to pursue something further except from the food and beverage industry. Yeah, I had to do a lot of researching. And also, in order to find the school, it took me, I think, about a year, back in 2015, I guess. And to me, it was a discovery, from my personal point of view. And the thing that everybody has mentioned so far is the respect for the what we have in our glass, or glasses. It's about sharing. It's about connection. It's about people, really. That was the most inspiring thing for me, as a product, that we have a product that we can sell or that we can share with. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So it was mostly internal, but there was the external input, like this is you can do something, but you had to figure it out yourself. What about you, Melody? Did your school encourage this a little bit more, or is it also more for, oh, I want to do it, and you figured it out how?
I would say both in the same time. Being studied in a hospitality school, it offered me a really great foundation for different type of knowledge. Of course, food and beverage knowledge will be a really key essential part. Most of us have to work within the kitchen and of course work in the service side, so we need to have skills for both. But as a wine sommelier, there's one skills that I find many potential hospitality student might forget is actually the financial and also business development skills. You can always know a lot about one particular wine or grapes, but without knowing the business part and the financial planning, that often not giving you a very good position and development in terms of career path. So studying in hospitality school, we learn about the finance, we learn about growth, profit, and business planning. And that I find it extremely useful when it's come to more senior sommelier role.
That's very interesting too. How the different schools as well will pursue that. I think there's always the balance of where you go and how that shapes you. So I want to bring it to Andrew. You have a very successful YouTube channel, The Grape Explorer. So when you discovered your passion for wine, when you took it really seriously, when you started educating yourself more, when did you decide this is what I want to do? I want to start a YouTube channel and share my passion there.
The YouTube channel launched in 2018. I took my WSET level 3 at the end of 2017. And even when I was taking the level 3, it wasn't at the forefront of my mind what I would actually do with it. You know, when the study group that I was part of, if you were to ask around the table what people were there for, I'd say 90% of people were there because it related to a role that they were either looking to do, they were already doing, or they had some future aspirations. I was purely there for fun. But when it came into the new year, I did start to think, I've got these qualifications. I wonder if there is something that I can do outside of, not as a full-time role, but as something to do as a hobby. And I somewhat naively thought, I don't think there are any wine YouTube channels. There's loads of them. And I didn't really appreciate that at the time. But I also wanted to be able to learn some new skills on the videoing side of things, really. How do you edit a video? How do you script for a video? How do you create a good thumbnail to attract attention? All of these different things were interesting to me, and it combined very nicely with wine. So the YouTube channel launched at the very start of 2018. And for the first 6 months, if I was to go back and look at the content on the channel, it's a real mix of different things. I was obviously trying out what would work and what didn't. A lot of unsuccessful videos in that first 6 months. But then I struck on asking people questions that you might get in exams if you were studying, and got a really good response to that. So over time, the channel's evolved into more of a wine education type channel, where I almost try and make it interactive. I do a lot of quizzes for people to keep their knowledge up to date, help them with their studies, give them an idea about, you know, tasting tips, study tips. And so I've gotten to combine my love of wine with me learning some technical skills, but I'm also feel like I'm helping other people as well. And that's a big bonus for me. That means I am using what I've learned and then able to pass it on to others. So the channel very much at the moment is around that wine education. From a wine education perspective, you know, it'll be about the exams, or it'll be about a particular grape, or it'll be a quiz on a particular region, just to keep those who are studying, give them another outlet for a resource for study materials.
No, I told you when we met, I was like, I wish this existed when I was trying to pass my exam. I didn't do nearly as well as you guys when passing my first level SAT. It is, like you said, there's a lot of detail when it comes to the wine, the study of wine. It's not, oh, you know, this is the grape and that's all. There's the geography, biology, chemistry. There's quite a lot, actually. So yeah, it's great to have a lot of different resources, and, you know, be inspired. Either you're inspired there or inspired university. You can combine all of that. And follow-up question: do you see yourself maybe one day pursuing it more, or is it just a hobby you want to keep as a hobby because otherwise you'll ruin it?
Yeah, I kind of think of it as my weekend job, but I am sort of acutely aware of a hobby becoming a job, and then there are different types of commitments that come with that, and always being mindful about that. And I still feel, even 3 years on YouTube, it can feel quite a slow process. I still think I'm trying to find that sweet spot of what's going to bring new people to the channel, how can I keep existing subscribers entertained, and how can I keep myself entertained? What's the sort of content people want to see? And finding something that matches those 3 requirements is something I definitely haven't perfected yet. So there's a lot more work to be done to improve the quality. And I'm sort of always striving to create the best output I can. So it's a great hobby to have, because, as I say, it teaches you other skills as well. But as for it becoming a job, yeah, hobbies and jobs, I don't know. I think there's probably a fine line where something you really enjoy might get ruined if you're having to feel you're having to put out content all the time. I think that's probably when it becomes that bit trickier.
True.
How do you feel, Melody? You're working on your hobby. You said you enjoyed what you do every day.
Oh, I I will always feel like this a little bit like gambling, because I put my biggest hobby and also my professional career in the same line. So you don't want to fail.
Yeah. Lots of pressure, lots of pressure. And Vidya as well. I want to take this next question to you. You had a very completely different career. Now you're pursuing your biggest hobby, wine, as more professional, being a wine advisor and freelance consultant. How do you feel about that? Is there a reason why? Is there some sort of balance that you're looking for? Is it just something you just love and you want to keep doing?
So it is something that I consciously took a decision to enter as, well, I can say full time, but really full time can mean 24 hours, 18 hours, whatever, like besides sleep. So I actually wanted a better balance between life and what I was doing for work, and I wanted to have more fun doing it. And like I mentioned before, wine brings together so many elements of fun and learning for me that I'm very happy that I took the step back, because it was also a point in my career when I wanted a little more balance and wanted to have fun. I mean, I had fun before as well, but the long hours and the travel that came with being able to be in such jobs also meant that I needed a step back. But having said that, I'm actually having a lot of fun, because while I'm doing something as wine advisory, I'm really also continuing to balance that with my wine education. I'm getting more comfortable with being on social media regarding my wine, because I can talk endlessly with friends about food and wine. But then they were like, if you're talking about it, why don't you just put it out there? So, if you're talking about it all the time, I mean, there'll be more people who will get to benefit from you. So in some ways, it's encouragement from friends and family, and also my own curiosity to see what else I can do with this, that I'm having fun with this at the moment. So it hasn't, I chose to take things at my pace. So there's no external pressure. This is what I want to do. So I don't have a structured goal or a game plan at this moment, because I want to very much have fun with it and see where I go with it. So in some ways, very similar to what Andrew was saying, the first 6 months, he was throwing a lot of content out. He was creating a lot of content and finding this sweet spot and the niche. So in some ways, I'm doing that, but I'm having fun studying about wine and continuing to be on social media and getting more comfortable with it. So at the moment, it's only been less than 2 years, so I'm having fun, and I hope it continues that way. I hope I never let it get to a point where it becomes a more serious work thing that will keep me awake at night.
I hope so. It's always good to really love what you do and not have it, kind of become a burden, a stressful burden. I want to pose kind of next question to Elisa. Everyone here has mentioned that you continued education, continue learning, never really drop it. You have to always keep in the know of what's new. Obviously, refresh the knowledge of the French and Spanish vineyards and geographical locations.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Do you obviously work at Alco? How do you feel about that?
Well, during the studies, basically, the school in itself, I will briefly talk about it. It lasted 9 months of intensive studies, including, everyday tastings, and for about, let's say 4 months around, we went around studying on field trips in France, in 5 or 6 different regions. And we also included cognac, so spirits were also involved. And during this period of time, we were supposed to find the internships that would eventually could turn into our jobs, obviously. I found that for myself, when our group decided we were supposed to go to Spain. So we organized this trip. We organized the places where we went. That's when I realized that, this is interesting. This is another way of seeing and feeling the industry and also the mentality of Spanish people. And due to my personal reasons, that time I was very excited about maybe even doing my internship in Spain. And that's how it, in the end, it turned out to be. I turned out to work in export management, and I really loved it. It's just that it's quite, I mean, everything that's that considers business, whether it's the marketing side, whether it's the financial side, whether it's import or export, you need to be on top of your game, know all the industry news, just like you said, basically. It's a discovery, and I really loved it. It's just that when my time then, basically, well, I mean, my job, I had another job after the internship in Spain. I wanted to stay in Valencia, but then it was way before COVID. For many reasons, I then turned out to come back here and actually restart here at the Monopoly. Just before I went to study, I used to work there actually as a sales clerk, and now I'm actually building up. I mean, I'm bringing more I would say my educational background into the game, and let's see from there. I wish it would be in the education in the future. And what I hear about your Andrew's and Vidya's, the most exceptional, and it's basically the new way that the industry is going. This is where it's supposed to go. It's about sharing knowledge. I really love that. So it's actually bringing many ideas and inspirations to me.
Yeah, bringing people together. I think wine can definitely do that, whether it's digital or real life, hopefully soon again. That's interesting. You mentioned alcohol, which is a monopoly in Finland, where all the alcohol has to be sold through, and it is a thing in all the Nordic countries. My own
and
home
in Canada,
country, Sweden,
as well.
There you go, in Canada as well. So that is a nice way to think about what are the career options for you in wine. It's, of course, you can be a sommelier in a restaurant, and you can work your way up. But if there's a life transition or something you want to do so differently, one of the ways you can go is always go to the suppliers, the producers, and find jobs that they, whether it's wine advisor or even clerk. If you go to the shop and you ask someone a wine recommendation, you expect them to know something, right? So hopefully they do. Andrew, do you want to kind of give me a bit of a summary of that YouTube video you've got in terms of what are the wine careers out there? You've got a long one, so maybe a quick one.
One of the questions I get asked a lot through comments is, I want to do this, or I want to do that, or what jobs are there in the industry? And so I did a careers in wine video last year, just to try and give people an idea that it's not just about the service industry, that there is a whole range of things that you can do. The best way that I can probably describe it through an experience of my own was I booked to go on a wine tour a couple of years ago, and it was a tour around 5 wineries. And it was an organised group tour that we were going to get picked up from our accommodation and driven to the wineries. So the guy who's picked me up and is driving me there is a wine educator in his own right. He has studied wine, and he uses that to take people on a journey around a number of wineries. He's able to talk about the wines, he's able to talk about the wineries, and use his education to do that. We then got to one of the wineries where we were handed over to the vineyard tour manager. So not a vineyard manager, someone who has been employed especially to take people around that vineyard, take them around the winery, sell the story of that particular wine producer. We then got handed off again to a food and wine specialist who was going to take us through a tasting that specialized in cheese and wine pairing and chocolate and wine tasting. So that's, again, someone else with another job. And then we also met on the same tour an events planner who helped people with weddings, with other types of parties, select the right types of wines to celebrate that occasion with. And so in doing a career in wine video, I was able to talk about all these different roles, because as you said at the outset, we think of service roles based in bars, restaurants and the like. But obviously it's so much wider than that. Wineries in particular have caught on to this tourism idea, the way to create additional income for the winery through tours, through tasting events. They now host online virtual events. And so the study of wine can really take you off in so many different directions. And that's what I wanted people who tune into the channel to understand.
That's brilliant. And I kind of want to pass it on quickly to Melody. You've done that traditional path though, but of course you've exposed yourself to many different. Currently what you do is create wine menus for so many different outlets. To get to a head sommelier position, you have to understand the whole business and how it works. And like you mentioned, financial side of things as well. Can you just tell us a little bit about that? Like, what do you do? What are the people involved? And it's not just that typical job.
Well, there's quite a lot of things to consider because wine sommelier more or less is a role to basically pick the right wine for the right venue. So a lot of my job is counting on the style of the property. It is could be a small casual restaurant, could be an innovative boutique hotel, or it's a very classic 5-star hotel. Different clientele or different target that we're looking for often will result a very different wine. As we're all enjoying wine in this group, we know that there's no one perfect wine which is going to fit everyone's favorite. So my job is to make sure everyone is going to find something that they will enjoy, but also they're able to discover, to expand, to try to search for something excitement in the same time. So in my role, I work with a lot of restaurant manager. I also work a lot with bartender, mixologist, just to expand of the idea to create the final experience, and that is the most essential outcome we're looking for.
Yeah, it's a whole experience, and obviously with WSET you study spirits as well, so you understand that. Obviously mixology is another side step to it, but we got a great question from, unfortunately it's called, as far as I can see, LinkedIn user, but thank you for asking this question. Is WSET the golden standard, or are there any other qualifications? I don't know, Elisa, you probably know.
Well, as a standard, WSET level 3 is a requirement for most of the jobs in the industry. I mean, in the business industry, at least. Of course, companies can sponsor you a diploma as well. That's also possible, and especially in the UK. I mean, that's where it started from. There are many different companies like Liberty Wines and etc. that can gain you, give you and help you with the knowledge further on. As for the sommelier, I mean, Melody can explain a bit more about what are the requirements probably.
If anyone would like to progress the career as sommelier, I will highly recommend to study the CMS, which is a short form for the Court of Master Sommelier. So it's quite a difference than the WSET qualification. Well, WSET is focused a bit more on vinification and also the style of the wine. The Court of Master Sommelier tend to focus also with a bit more tasting skills and also surveys. And the difference between both exams, the most significant difference will be the Court of Master Sommelier is completely a verbal exam, when WSET is a written one. Because in a restaurant or hotel scenario, you won't really have time to go back to the guest. And normally the answer should be given directly. So that is the most challenging part.
Well, that's super interesting. Didn't know that.
I think you've also got the Wine Scholar Guild qualifications, and I'm sure Vidya can talk about those because I know she studied those.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, so the Wine Scholar Guild is really pitched at something between, I would say, WSET level 3 and WSET level 4, the diploma. You don't need to have prior wine knowledge, but I think it helps to have done at least a WSET level 2 to redo the Wine Scholar Guild. So the Wine Scholar Guild is picking up more in the UK. They have 3 programs, and they might have more programs coming out in the future. So the current 3 programs they have are the French Wine Scholar, the Spanish Wine Scholar, and the Italian Wine Scholar program. The Italian wine is in 2 parts. These are really helpful as well to further the knowledge. And this doesn't give you, I would say, practical skills in service, as Melody was saying, or necessarily in tasting skills. It's a lot of theoretical knowledge to add on to some of your other qualifications. In itself, I've not noticed the Wine Scholar Guild qualifications as requirements for any job. There is a difference in format between the testing of WSET level 3 and the Wine Scholar Guild, because in WSET level 3, there is a tasting element to the test and the exam as well. And there's a written portion, not just multiple choice. The Wine Scholar Guild may appeal to some folks who find that it's easier to choose between multiple choices offered. So it's very much like level 2, but the quantity of knowledge one needs to have is really between a level 3 and a level 4. So there is quite a lot of studying to do. But also, I think some of these programs offer, having done WSET and the Wine Scholar Guild programs, I think that some of the Wine Scholar Guild programs are also structured for people who learn from audio and video instead of just classes. So you have to figure out what style of learning and what kind of exam you would like to undertake to be successful in, and knowing fully well that the Wine Scholar Guild is not necessarily a qualification that people look for when employing you. So I think it's a combination of what will work for an individual, what they want to get out of it, and the employment opportunities. So for employment-wise, perhaps the CMS or the WSET would be more relevant, but for furthering knowledge and to even do wine tourism, for an example, and you want to go in depth into one area, then the Wine Scholar Guild will be an additional component.
Yeah, that's just so many things. It's amazing. And I think it's interesting, as like all of you are saying, that there is further education. You keep learning. You don't really stop, and there is just more to do it. And whether you want to do service, whether you want to do menu design or business side of things, or you do something your own on the side, or is it advisory? There are many different ways to go. And whether just kind of a statement out there, if you are interested or even just curious about wine, pursue it. You don't have to spend money on qualifications to begin with. There's a lots of resources. Andrew's, for example, YouTube channel, that you can just learn more and explore. And if you really want to know more and dive deeper into it, start with the first few qualifications, start with what's relevant for you, and yeah, always keep learning and push it. Because if you really are interested, and if you're just curious on how you can improve your career in F&B, or how you can just make your free time more interesting, yeah, take any opportunity to learn. Just a statement out there.
And the WSET courses don't cover every wine producing country, certainly not at levels 2 and 3. You cover the key countries around the world. But when I did it, and I don't know if it's in there now, they don't have English wine covered off. And of course, English wine is becoming more and more popular. And it may be in the future that it changes, but I still need to know about English wine. So there's still a lot of, you still have to be a self-starter in this, because once you've got the qualification, that's fantastic. Your knowledge doesn't stop there. It's an evolving thing. You need to stay in touch with everything to remain current, really, within wine discussions.
Exactly. So I think it's there's just so much to learn, and also depends on what one person's passion is. You know, if it's to focus on English wine or Spanish wine, or let's say Portuguese wine, then there aren't necessarily programs, even within WSET, that will help with specialization. And there may be some, but they may not cover at the level of depth that one wants to have fun and to be successful in their own chosen career. So it very much I think learning is something that we'll always have to do. And it's fun. I find it fun. So hopefully, with resources like Andrew's and a lot of other resources, even on IGTV, learning becomes more fun as well.
Yeah, there's learning everywhere now. And speaking of that, Elisa, would you recommend any things for students, or just anyone really, to look into? So is it like a book that you think is a brilliant book for them to have to discover the business side of wine, or is there a blog or a website or a person that they should follow? What is your recommendation?
Well, during my studies, I started to follow Wine Genie, well, Wine Folly as well, but I would say it's more audiovisual, kind of documented things that people enjoy these days, and especially, I mean, if you're an audiovisual person, I would definitely suggest to check online and their social media. That's where you can get a great kickoff and really build your knowledge. And I definitely would recommend these. I mean, Vidya's blog and your Instagram, and same goes to Andrew's YouTube channel. These things are the ones that we missed, Maria, back when we were in the uni. I mean, this was not a thing. I mean, nobody really developed any further.
No, I think you were the only one who took a step further and did a lot of more studies than most of us. Well, which is why you're now more qualified than most of us. And Melody, what about you? What is there anything that you recommend that people or companies to follow for further knowledge?
I think there's a lot of resources which is look a bit more like academic, a bit more with serious side, but maybe I would like to highlight few which is more the fun side. Maybe a bit more like beside of wine book. I would highly recommend people interest in wine also look into some wine book which is with history related. If you just find in a lot of bookshop or just go to online to search, there's a lot of history strongly related with wine, especially in the Second World War of time. There's a couple of like really worldwide famous tasting which happened in Paris. There's something very interesting to read and give you something more extent rather than classic wine producer or wine making. I'll also recommend anyone interested in wine, no matter for professional or habit, do have a look at the wine magazine to look into the critic, how people use word or expression to describe wine. And I find it very helpful.
Yeah, amazing. Great. Well, we are coming up to the end. The time has been flowing by. Just to wrap up, I want to end all of these panels with just one piece of advice, because there's a lot that is possible that you can do. There's many resources to explore. If you're not interested in necessarily wine, you're just interested in drinks and spirits, you could pursue spirits. You can become a beer sommelier, which is called Cicerone, I believe. You can become specialized in coffees and teas and combination of chocolates and drinks and such. So there's really almost no end to it, despite it being a very niche side of the food and beverage area of hospitality. What would each one of you recommend for those of us curious about careers in wine and opportunities in F&B to do today? What can they do? Is it something just about, going to explore, or, I don't know, depends on what your personal, obviously, perspective is, but to students, graduates, but also someone who is already have some experience in F&B who are at a crossroads today, like many people in the industry are, what should they do next? Anything that you can add? So we go with Andrew first.
I think one of the things that I would take away from this is if you are interested in a career in this particular industry, have a look at the resources that are available to understand what opportunities are available in that industry. There are some really good resources out there. I think there's websites like Jobs in Wine. The WSET has a jobs board that you can just go and see what's available and see whether what's available matches your own goals, your sort of career aspirations. I think the other thing, and I see this through the comments on some of the videos that I do, is be realistic about your goals as well. I think it's fantastic that people have some lofty ambitions within life, but they don't always know where to start. They've got an end point, but they haven't got a start point. So plot a path. Think about where a career could take you to get to that end point, and that would be my advice for anyone thinking of starting out.
Great. Elisa?
I love that what you said about having realistic, basically dreams, because I was going to say, dream, please, people, think of the unthinkable, what hasn't been done yet. Wine industry is a tough industry once you get into it, but say no to the naysayers. Yeah. You'll figure it out. I mean, everyone will figure it out. Yeah, just do it.
Awesome. Vidya?
So I think Andrew and Eliza have taken away the advice that I had. Just kidding. I can't agree more with what they're saying, but I actually think you should also have fun. And wine is something that you can always come back to at any point. There are resources available. And if you want to pursue something more seriously, a hobby or a more serious hobby, you can do that, as I've done. And it's not like I had a background in wine at all, or in food and beverage, or in hospitality. But if you keep your eyes open and you're willing to learn and dream and lay down a career path, there's no stopping you. And keep an eye on the jobs boards. For those people local in London and in whichever area you're in, find a local jobs board as well. Since you're all on LinkedIn, there is a newly set up group, probably less than a month old, called Wine Jobs GB. Have a look, enroll yourself. And particularly if you are of BAME background, which is Black, Asian, minority, or ethnic groups, there is a Be Inclusive Hospitality, which is also setting up mentorships. So sign up, register. They have a free event next Tuesday on February 9th. Look at Be Inclusive Hospitality's website. I'm not affiliated with them, but I really support their purpose in helping people find mentors. And I think the program kicks off on February. Applications close on 26th of February. So keep an eye out, find the resources, dream, and be on a path of learning. You'll have fun.
Thank you. What about Melody?
Yes, I totally agree. It's very important that you have fun and also enjoying what you're actually doing. I recommend anyone who want to go into sommelier industry, don't be shy. Ask for the opportunity, because I do understand one of the biggest difficulties for any newly graduate to join the industry is they don't actually have any experience. But believe me, sometimes you just have to ask for it. This is how I get my first job. They don't even have the position. I actually ask for it and try to be proactive and catch every single training or learning opportunity with you. If the opportunity before it arrives, I would suggest to write your own notes. Write the tasting notes, which is meaningful to yourself. Don't be worried about you're not using any professional terms or the structure. Write something that is going to relate it to your experience, or even you believe this is a summer wine or winter wine, drink with your parents, drink with your loved one. Write something down and go back to review. And one day when you start to develop a bit more vocabulary or experience, and those notes will mean a lot.
Fantastic. Brilliant advice. And it just all seems to go into the umbrella of keep learning. If you like it, if you're interested in it, pursue it, whether it's a profession or not. I think it seems to me that all of you here and those who are in wine, then they're because they love it. You don't accidentally get a job in wine and you go to work hating it every day, because that is a tough job. And there's also lots of very niche things within wine. So definitely amazing. Well, lots to take away from today. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your stories, and your advice. I want to thank the audience as well. And obviously next week, we have the next episode of Discover Hospitality, which will be about F&B. It will be a bit of a step back from wine, and we're looking at the bigger picture of food and beverage careers. And what can you do if you've been a chef for 10 years? What's a possible next step? And where can you go? So that's going to be amazing as well. So thank you for the panel. Thank you for the audience. Thank you, everybody. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of the day, evening, morning, whatever you are. And I will see you here next week at same time, same place. Take care.
Thanks, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Thank you all.
Thank you all.